Good evening. It's been a couple of months. Oh, quite a while. How have you been? Did you miss me? Do you wanna talk about some grinding spots? We got some changes recently, more specifically the increase in the drop rate for the black magic crystals in Valencia, so I figured might as well go back there, grind a couple of hours, see what's changed, and just slowly try to get back into the whole upload schedule. So today's topics are gonna be Akman, Histria, and Kraduga, those three places I visited, basically those three for 3 hours each, just to see how the money per hour looks like these days after the black magic crystal increase in drop rate, and also since they buffed the Agris efficiency as well, I tested that one too. So we are gonna talk about those, sit back, relax, and yeah, let's begin. First things first, I suppose I'm still playing Corsair Succession for the class, if it's relevant, and I have the gear on the screen, essentially enough AP to have no problems for Akman, Histria and Kraduga in particular. And I have full tier 4 pets, so it should be the most amount of loot possible. With that being said, to give you a quick sneak peek, these are the 3 pictures with my 3-hour sessions for Akman, Histria and Kraduga in particular. These are my results, and I guess let's take them in order and start talking about Akman. For my 3-hour session at Akman, I guess you could examine the screenshots if you wanna know exactly how many Afuarus and events I spawned every single hour, since I don't actually know those numbers off the top of my head, but it was a decent amount, no complaints there, and I did drop 1 Tungrat earring in 3 hours, which I would say it's decent RNG. It's not amazing, it's not bad, 1 in 3 hours, it's fine. The only buff really was the black magic crystal drop rate, in which case I got 3, 3 and 3 from my 3-hour sessions, and I should point out the second hour was done on full Agris to test the efficiency, so Agris and blue loot scroll, and the first and third hour on a yellow loot scroll, just because I tested the entirety of Valencia on yellow loot scroll, so I wanted to have the same consistency, so keep that in mind. The Khafra drop rate, I guess it's not that relevant, but it seems to be all over the place from my 3 hours, 20, 32 and 27. It averaged at 26, which I personally kind of expected, but the range was kind of a bit weird. Still, 3 black magic crystals drop rate per hour, that's today's important number, and let's say close to 15,000 trash per hour is my clearing speed on, again, a yellow loot scroll and Corsair Succession. If anything else is relevant, 26 average scrolls dropped per hour, blackstones in total, let's say about 58 per hour average, so that's decent, I guess, good to know. And yeah, money per hour wise, these in darker green, as you already know from the past, these are taxed, assuming you sell them to the marketplace. The ones in lighter green are not taxed because you sell these to NPCs or some other place, and you should expect to make somewhere around 300 million silver per hour on a yellow loot scroll, and maybe 350 million silver per hour if you go for blue and Agris. Again, only trash changes, the only difference is the trash loot. Moving on, let's talk about the 3 hours in Histria. Once again, look at the screenshots for the Afuaru and the event drops per hour, and once again, the second hour was spent fully on Agris to test the efficiency, which I will show you later, and the first and third hour on a yellow loot scroll. I believe here I dropped or spawned more Afuarus than in Akman, it could just be RNG, and just in general my 3 hours here were a bit more RNG carried than Akman in particular. I actually did drop 1 Tungrat necklace and 3 black shards, which basically are free Tungrat earrings, so you could say at least 1 accessory drop per hour, which I personally would call a bit RNG carried. Once again, the only change should have been the black magic crystal drop rate, which is kind of all over the place, or at least it was for me. 1 of them in the first hour, 0 in the second hour, and 5 of them in the third hour. Again, it averaged at 3 of them per hour, which is somewhere here. No, 2 of them per hour, so I wouldn't say it's actually lower than Akman, it's just my RNG. It's probably still somewhere around 3 BMCs per hour. In terms of Khafras, it's similar to Akman, I averaged 22, but again, only 3 hours spent, so that's probably the reason. And about 7,000 something trash per hour on a yellow loot scroll is what I was able to manage, seeing how I didn't visit Histria in literally like half a year or more. Considering you're only using a yellow loot scroll, it's around 320 million silver per hour or 375 on blue plus Agris if you wanna burn Agris points here, which you will see later, the efficiency. Personally, I again would say I was a bit RNG carried with the 3 black shards. Let's just say I drop only one, so 1 Tungrat earring and 1 Tungrat necklace. This seems to be at least more realistic in terms of rare item drops, in which case it's only 280 million silver per hour. Personally, with let's say 20 hours spent on both Akman and Histria, I believe both of them should be worth about the same amount of money, but again, I'm repeating myself, only 3 hours spent, so it's not gonna be super accurate. Still, in terms of Blackstones, if it's relevant to some people, 55 average per hour, so it's again, once again, the same as Akman, and about 23 or so scrolls dropped. Regardless, let's move on into the third area for today, Kratuga. Most people would probably agree that Kratuga is not technically part of Valencia, it's kind of media, but in my eyes it is Valencia, because it kind of makes the same amount of money as Valencia, and it requires basically the same gear level as Akman and Histria, so it's one of those mid-level grinding spots. Again, I spent 3 hours here, look at the screenshots for the drop rates for Afuaros and events, if you wanna know those. I should point out, I spawned one event literally as I entered Kratuga before I even did my very first hour. I did the event just because why not, why miss out on that one, and I dropped a Tungrat earring from that before even doing my 3 hours. Maybe that skewed my RNG, maybe it didn't, I excluded it anyway, but just fun to point it out. Even with that, my RNG was still kind of way too good, let's say, for this place. I dropped a total of 4 Tungrat earrings in my 3 hours and 1 Elcar in the last hour, so technically at least 1 accessory per hour, and an Elcar on top of that every 3 hours is kind of unreasonable, but at least that was my experience. I'm repeating myself, but the first and the third hours were on a yellow loot scroll, the second hour was full on Agris to test the efficiency. Again, I excluded the trash from the money per hour. You know the drill at this point. Regardless, in terms of the BMC drop rates, since that's the main attraction, it's again about 3 of them per hour. I got 2, 2 and 3 from my 3 hours. I believe that's the conclusion. 3 BMCs per hour is what you should expect on average. I got less Khafras than Akman and Histria. I believe that's normal, it's not just my bad RNG. 17 average, 18, 16 and 17 from the 3 hours, about 26 forbidden books, so it's about the same as Akman and Histria for their scrolls, and the Blackstones, these are actually lower. So instead of the 55 to 60 that I got at Akman and Histria, here it's about 41 or 42, so it's a bit lower. I wouldn't say my clearing speed was bad, it's probably a bit slower than some other people or classes, about let's say 11,000 trash per hour on a yellow loot scroll, and again with my super RNG carried hour with the Elcars, I got 350 million silver per hour on a yellow loot scroll, or close to 400 on a blue plus Agris if you have enough Agris points to grind that many hours. Still, I made this second money per hour number with no Elcars because at the very least maybe it's normal to get 1 Tungrat per hour drop rates, maybe you could manage that, but let's just exclude the Elcar, in which case it's about 290-ish million silver per hour on yellow and 330 on the blue plus Agris. At this point, you might have already noticed, all of these 3 areas are somewhere around 290 or 300 million silver on yellow, and the only fluctuation is whether or not you get a bit more RNG carried on one of them. I personally believe all 3 of these places should be valued around 300 million silver on a yellow loot scroll these days, and the Black Magic Crystal patch really didn't do that much, it's just around 3 BMCs dropped per hour. Now, the real question is, how do you think these 3 places compare to the rest of Valencia? Remember how Valencia got the rework to trash loot and now it's amazing money per hour, and I tested all of those places? I mentioned earlier I used yellow loot scroll on purpose. It's basically so I can put these 3 areas on these charts, the money per hour ranking for the grinding spots. If you're gonna use a yellow loot scroll, I should point out I tested all of the other Valencia areas on a 50% drop rate event, if you remember back then. So it's a bit unfair because today's Kratuga, Akman and Histria don't have the 50% drop rate event, but still, this is how they kind of rank. The Kratuga with the Elkar, the RNG carried session, is essentially the second best one, just below Sulfur. Histria comes after that, and Akman basically below Pilaku JL or around Pilaku JL. If you look at the patch notes, the other Valencia areas were also buffed for the BMC drop rates, which they don't exist here because I didn't retest them. But still, it's nice to know where the areas rank. And before I actually forget, Agris efficiency. I did say I tested that one as well on all three areas. This is a chart with a conclusion, again comparing the Agris efficiency from the other Valencia regions after they were reworked to the three places for today. At Akman, I burned 54,000 points in 1 hour, Kratuga 40,000 Agris points in 1 hour, and Histria also about 40,000 Agris points in 1 hour. The second chart, it's the same one but ordered for efficiency. Once again, if you remember, the lower this number is, the more efficient an area is. Fogans is pretty much the best, Centaurs comes after that, Bashims and so on. Today's areas, Histria is about here, so not the best, not technically the worst, but if anything, I would recommend you to use Agris at Histria if you want to, but once again, not amazing. And for Kratuga and Akman, Akman is literally at the bottom of the chart, so if you're gonna grind Valencia anyway, I still would not recommend Kratuga and Akman to burn your Agris points, because it's just not good enough. These two places definitely need the trash to be buffed. The price of the trash. And yeah, I will leave it at that. That's all I was able to discover so far. I only visited these three places. I will maybe visit the rest of Valencia in the future, who knows, but for now all I can say is thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. You know, I will see you next time with other areas, and leave a comment with what was your experience with the changes. What do you think about the buffs and all of that? I will see you next time. As always, bye bye.